Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of JamTalks. My name is Rachel Dulcine, and I am the chair of the Jamaica Diaspora Worldwide Organization Task Force. For the last several weeks, I have been doing interviews with some amazing diaspora leaders around the world who are doing work that benefit Jamaicans at home and abroad. These interviews are premiered every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the JDTAN YouTube channel, as well as Jamaicans.com. Today, I am excited, really, to have Dr. Megel Barker with me for this interview. He is coming to us from the Middle, or we just said Middle East. From the Middle East. And as I've said often in these interviews, I have just been amazed at the places where Jamaicans live, how far from home Jamaicans live. So it's been fascinating to meet so many Jamaicans around the world who are doing work, continuing to do work to benefit not just the homeland, but for Jamaicans who have migrated to so many places around the world. So Dr. Barker actually works with the Jamaica Middle East Diaspora. As we said, we're going to say Middle East. We decided that we're going to say Middle East Diaspora. And so let's get started. So welcome, Dr. Barker. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for having me.
So I know right now it's morning where we are. What time is it where you are?
At the moment, it's it's 4:15 in the evening. I've just completed my day of work.
Wow, so you've just completed and we're getting started. We're just starting our day on here on the East Coast of the US. Wow, that's amazing. So Dr. Barker, tell us a little bit about yourself. What'd you say?
I'm saying it's the same sun. So already, so it will soon get to you.
True. So Dr. Barker, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from in Jamaica, and what your role is in the organization.
Okay, so where am I from in Jamaica? I'm from Annotto Bay. I'm from Annotto Bay, St. Mary's. So born and bred in Annotto Bay. From a place in Annotto Bay that I'm proud to call, they call it Round the Lane. And it's called Round the Lane because we had two lanes that meet at a point, and it's really it's a very challenging area to be in. But we had the sea, so always had the sea at the end of it. Then I think I grew up in Annotto Bay until about to high school. I went to St. Mary High School and then finished high school. And I think I went to Teachers College in Portland. So past the Gardens Teachers College, where I began my career in education in 1994, the first time I entered a classroom. So I've done a stint in Jamaica, an 8-year stint in Jamaica as a teacher. And then I moved to the UK. So I was in England for 10 years working in the government system. And then at the time I decided it was time to do something different. And so it so happened that the different that I chose to do sent me to the Middle East, to a country that very few people know, a country called Oman. And it was really just a pin on a map, really, rather than any intellectual decision to go there. It was just a matter of a job offer came up, and so let's just try it. So my family and I, we decided to go to Muscat, and we've been here for 10 years. So
wow,
it's been an amazing time.
Wow.
So while living in the Middle East, I think a few years ago, a group of professionals in the Middle East, they decided to form the Jamaica Middle East Diaspora. I was present at the time when they were forming it, but I was not part of the group that, the original, the founders, I was on the outskirts. A lot of that happened in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. So those guys got together and they got going with that. And I was watching from the sidelines, and when there were events that were happening, I would get involved. I think in 2019, the then chairman reached out to me because I'd been doing a few things, but I hadn't, gotten myself too involved. And I suppose when you're living overseas and especially so far from Jamaica, it seems
Mhm.
so difficult to figure out how do you get involved. You might want to be involved, but
Mhm.
you're thinking it's too far away. When you're in the US, it's easy to see how that works. But for me, it was not something that I had in my mind so much. I did my own little things, with schools that I know, but nothing from an organizational perspective. So I remember Sam Nelson, who was the then chairman, he reached out to me and said, would you be willing? We're looking at creating this educational task force within the Jamaica Middle East Diaspora Group. And he asked me if I was willing to do it. And to be honest, I said, what was that? What was that? And he wasn't particularly clear on that, but he said, you can define it, what that is. And it's a new role. So I decided to take that on. So since then, since from just before COVID began, just a little bit, maybe 2 months before, I was anointed or appointed the chairman for the Jamaica Middle East Diaspora Educational Task Force. And to this day, I'm still going through COVID with that role. And to this day, I'm still the chairman as we speak. So
Wow, that's a
that's
really
that's a really
cool journey. Why do I hear myself echoing? Do you hear me echoing? For some reason I hear myself echoing. That's a really cool journey. One of the things I've learned, in my interviews with Jamaicans is Jamaicans were adventurous. Let me tell you, they very adventurous and willing to really take a leap of faith. And so many of the leaders that I've had the pleasure of talking with, the where they ended up is very similar. It was either a job opportunity or they wanted something different. And some of the places they may not have necessarily heard of, but they were willing to take that chance for an opportunity. And so I know definitely that's one of the things I have definitely admired since I've been doing these interviews is just the adventure, the willingness to just jump. They don't know where they're going, what it's going to be like there, if they'll even make it, but just the will to take a leap of faith.
Yeah, a part of that is part of what was instilled in us in Jamaica, to be fair. There was a poem I remember when we were going to school called Jamaica Men. They say, you see us in Nigeria, you can see us in Cologne, to Ghana and Liberia, Jamaica men have gone. When they had and they couldn't manage, then the call went out for workers and they got Jamaica men. It's something like that. So as you grow up, you kind of realize that, let's get out there. And, the funny thing is, the good thing as I got into working in the Middle East, I got a chance to travel a lot more. And, you'd be surprised, you go to the furthest parts of the world and everyone knows about Jamaica. I was in Istanbul and we were walking in the Grand Bazaar. And I just saw this. I went into the shop. I was looking for something to buy, a souvenir. And this elderly Turkish man, this elderly Turk, he kind of asked where I'm from. And I said, Jamaica, And he just stooped down into the corner and turned his radio up. And it was reggae music playing on the radio.
Wow.
This is all the way in Istanbul, So in one sense, you travel anywhere. I've never been anywhere and I say Jamaica and people are like, what's that? It's really an amazing feeling to be a Jamaican in the world. It's almost like a celebrity status, like you're Jamaican. There's one small piece though that most people wouldn't recognize if you didn't live in the Western, well, the Eastern hemisphere, so to speak. There are so many people who know about Jamaica and they all know Bob Marley and increasingly Usain Bolt, but many don't know where it is. It's amazing. You don't know where it is. In fact, quite a lot think it's in Africa. Quite a lot. I'd say
Really?
8 out of 10 people who say they know Jamaica, know Bob Marley, think it's an African country.
Wow.
That is an amazing piece that I never knew before. And until I begin to explain, I know, because they'll say Afrique or something like that, And I said, no, it's not Africa. And then you're explaining, but that doesn't change their idea of it. It's just that I'm trying to let them know that it's not in Africa. I don't think it changed their minds. That's just a conception that people have, that Jamaica is, many people, that is an African country. So it's not a negative, and maybe it is.
But it's definitely a fascinating fact. that
It
I
is.
never even really thought about that. You know, when you grow up in Western culture, you take so much for granted that the rest of the
Yeah.
world just knows, you know? So
Yeah. They
that's
just,
a really a fascinating fact. So I know you speak English. I know you speak Patois. What other
yeah.
languages do you speak besides those two?
No, no,
Or
that's
dialect?
it for me.
Oh, really?
I mean, I'm in Oman, so Arabic is the national language. So I know a little Arabic enough to, if I get lost, I know my way around.
Okay.
I can communicate, you know, in Arabic. I can hear snippets of conversations and I can participate in those conversations. So yeah, I know a little Arabic. I can converse Spanish as well because that's our Jamaican. That's a lot of us learn a little
Uh-huh.
Spanish. And I speak a little Spanish. I could survive for a while and I'd get better, but there's no fluency there, you know.
Okay.
There's no fluency there. It's all survival. Uh,
Well, that sometimes that's all you need, really, right? It is just enough to be able to converse, survive, and live a life. So that's still pretty
connect.
cool.
I learned Arabic to connect, you know, to the people. You speak a little, they kind of say you're trying, you know.
Okay. So it's an effort that counts. It's an effort that
Of
counts.
course.
So for the Jamaica Middle East diaspora, what exactly does the organization do or provide for Jamaicans?
Okay, so as I said, it's really an organization that comes from the work of many educators that are in this part of the world, and a large number of then people in the airplane industry, you know.
Okay.
So we started to connect and say, what could we do to get stuff going in back in Jamaica? And as I said, I wasn't in the founding piece, but I could see the work that they were doing. So they were, you know, doing, certainly I know that they were participating in a number of the conferences. Particularly they were sending back, you know, people to go and present. There were people doing workshops in schools, doing stuff like coding, robotics, that kind of thing. So in the beginning, it was a mixture of stuff. They were sending things back to Jamaica, like, you know, if they could get computers, if they could get, you know, clothes, those kind of things. In the beginning, it was a lot of those kind of support. But eventually, the diaspora also realized that there was a need to serve the diaspora as well that was in the the Middle East. So you started to see this services move into like some business services, helping people set up businesses, making connections to the ministries and so on. So I think that's when it started to branch out in a number of you know, activities. The people who were involved, I think, as I said, Sam, who was the then chair, and he was the part and passed over to John Warren. They started to look at how can we create more sectors within what we do and get more leadership in the organization, which is when they reached out to me to say, can you take on the educational portfolio while we would have different people focusing on other aspects. So for example, the diaspora group was instrumental in welcoming the Paralympics team to, because the Paralympics was held in Qatar, and they made sure that they felt welcome, met them, organized. And just recently, there was a group from Jamaica, about 8 students from Jamaica, who came to participate in a Model United Nations conference. And there's a lot of fundraising to ensure that that was a remarkable and an unforgettable experience for them. So they were doing a lot of those kind of, you know, events and support and helping with work within the diaspora. But I think, as I said, they asked me to take on the educational task force. And that's when we started to focus particularly in how we could help um, you know, with the educational thing. What really I'd say kickstarted it was COVID. COVID came in just at the time when I came into that role. And I remember we had a small team. I remember the team, I had Shari Franklin, who was with me, William Fullerton, Donald Clary, Stacy, uh, um, Sanya. These are the people who we said, let's get a team together and start to produce some things to help people in Jamaica, because COVID had kind of changed the game somewhat. We could now reach into the country, strangely enough, that we never really were feeling it was possible. Or let us say the country was more receptive to this. So one of the first projects that we did was the brainchild of someone that said, Sanya. She came up with the idea of a study-thon. And so what we did was start providing CXC lessons in math, English, and science for students back in Jamaica that did not have access, didn't have teaching going on in those schools due to COVID. That was the first project that we really got involved in that was right at the grassroots level. And there were so many students involved and so many teachers who came forward and said, I'll give my time. So these were put in place, and this was like for June in 2020. Since then, we have launched so many projects, like there's so many things that we have done. I could go on, and I'll certainly, maybe as you ask me some more questions, I can go into more detail. The first project we did was the study-thon. And from there, it was like, what else can we do? And in a year, there are so many things I could start talking about.
Wow. And I was one of the questions I was going to ask was how has COVID affected the work that the organization does? But it looks like COVID has actually been a boost. COVID has actually allowed the organization to expand what it does in a unique way.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
As I said before, being so far away, how do you help apart from send things back or
Right.
send money? But now we were able to leverage our expertise, leverage our expertise right back into the classroom. So, I mean, I didn't make a list of the part that but one of the first partnerships that came out of this was the one with JDTAN. We started to see so JDTAN reached out and said, hey, we're having this conference and it's going to have to go online and we need some speakers. And that was the first thing we said, okay, I think I was one of the speakers. I remember Shari was one of the speakers. And we started to work together. Now, remember, in the past, you wouldn't even consider those kind of collaborative activities because you try to find speakers who can physically be there and have the time to fly to Jamaica to do the conference, And so it was really down to who could do it. But now you could find the most engaging speaker, the people with the most the most impactful content and say, you can just sign into a Google or a Zoom and provide that directly into people's households and classrooms and homes. And so we started to see that potential very, very early. I mean, almost every other week, there were conferences that we were providing, professional development workshops. I know we worked with the JTA in their conference and provided workshops in their conference. We created a world conference with Church's Teachers College. Just working with them, working on critical thinking, because we felt that, there's a talk about critical thinking, but who was doing, we felt the best place to go was in the Teachers College. And we created a partnership with Church Teachers College and delivered some stuff with that. SCN, we're doing a lot of work with a lot of organizations. What we specifically did, we started a tablet project and we actually delivered 16 tablets. We realized that most of the work was being done in the high schools and so we said we're going to focus a little on the early childhood institutions in Jamaica. And so we started a project here where we tried to get some funding to get some tablets in the hands of schools there. And so we established some connections with Petersfield Primary, Hart Hill Primary, there were McGrath Road Primaries all across. This is Portland, Westmoreland, and St. Catherine. We had 5 primary schools and we delivered 4 tablets each of those schools. And just the gratitude from those schools to say, we have tablets for kids who didn't have access to it, but they can come to school and take up one of the school's tablets, So these are like really impactful stuff that we started to do right at the grassroots level.
So I'm happy to hear Petersfield Primary because that's my school. When I was born in Jamaica, yes, I was born in St. Mary, I don't know which part, but I claim Westmoreland, Petersfield because my grandmother raised me until I migrated to the US. But I attended Petersfield Primary.
Oh, wow, yes, what a nice part. I love the principal there. I'm trying to remember.
Yes, Miss Hamlin is absolutely amazing.
Lovely, amazing lady,
Yes, and amazing.
They were so grateful for what we were doing. In fact, she was the one who made me understand the impact of what we were doing because we were just doing it. She was like, listen, because I was like, how does this help, And she, this makes a big difference. A child who doesn't have can come to school and use one,
Right.
And so we really wanted to figure out ways in which we could impact the learning, impact. We had, I think the best thing we did there last year was a project called Math Clinic.
Mm.
And again, not my, it was through my, but through William Fullerton. It was a math teacher. He wanted to provide math classes for students in Jamaica directly
Okay.
in. And anyone who goes to school in Jamaica knows that a lot of people go to school, but many people do extra math class, right?
Mhm.
And if you can afford it, you go, right? So we thought we would provide math classes for free online. And our classes were over 100 kids in the classes. I
Wow. At
mean,
one
we,
time?
oh, it was a lot of kids. And the
Wow.
attendance was from December all the way to June. Those classes were run.
Wow.
We covered the entire CXC syllabus. We had a database of over 250 kids who signed up for it. And we had WhatsApp groups. They were doing work. We kept them, it was amazing. I mean, it was happening in our late night.
Mhm.
Remember that
Yeah.
so we're doing this like up to like 11, 12 o'clock in the night. But the kids were so amazing. They were
Yeah.
always, every week they were there for every lesson, doing the work, asking questions, and we're delivering this online. And I mean, it was amazing to see. And the teachers were so thankful to the fact that we've formed so many partnerships with those schools. And right now we're just getting messages. When is it starting again? When is
Mhm.
it starting? And that led into a lot of professional development with the actual schools because they were seeing some of the methods that we were using. And they said, can you come and provide workshops for our teachers? So we started to do workshop with the teachers to show them some of the technology that we're using, show them some of the thinking that we were using. So it was, I mean, COVID really, really changed the game to the point where I think diaspora groups have, can really impact, on the ground in a positive way. And it's just a matter of leveraging that and continuing to leverage that.
And I think absolutely. I'm just sitting here in just really in amazement, just as the in not even 2 years yet, just the traction that you've been able to have during a global pandemic, a time when so many people are feeling disconnected, that this organization was able to actually become more connected.
Certainly. I think the way you put it is perfect. We felt a pandemic was a terrible thing to waste. So we
I love
decided
that.
to act. So,
I'm going to
we
quote you
decided
on that.
it is true. It is true. It really was I mean, obviously the students suffered, and
Mhm.
education would have impact. But what it says is what's possible in the future.
Yes.
I mean, we had, as I said, it was a math class of over. I mean, there was one point we had like 180 kids. We had to start running a live YouTube because the Google Meet couldn't hold, because
Wow.
Google had a limit of 100 and the kids were dropping out. And we said, let's open a YouTube channel to run the lesson live. And we had to figure out how to have both going, and I'm in the background while William is teaching. Then I did some teaching, but
Mhm.
we covered the whole syllabus. We covered the entire mathematics syllabus in those classes, which presents so many opportunities for the future,
Mhm.
because the reality is that Jamaica has so many schools that 0% of the kids pass their math exam. They leave
Wow.
school with zero mathematics qualification, certainly at the CXC level, or what they call CSEC at the time. And once you get out of the top 50, it's like 2%, 3% of kids, an
Mhm.
entire cohort of 250 kids, maybe 8 or 9 of them gets a grade 3 and above in math. So there's always, and this is my plea to anyone out there, there's always a space to help.
Yeah.
For me, it was really eye-opening that there were so many things we could do, but thought that because we live in a world where things are changing so rapidly, I thought my country was moving along in some ways. But while they were moving, our distance was, I mean, I'm talking to teachers that don't have a laptop, I mean? They're like, and
Right.
I'm like, I've never worked in a school in the past,
Yeah.
nearly 20 years that does not give me a laptop when I walk into the school.
Right.
And I'm people, and the closest thing we had, so there's a lot of work that can be done and still can be done. But what
Mhm.
COVID has shown us is that the technology, all our teachers in Jamaica started to get training in Google Classroom. They're able to log on. So we were just offering so many professional development. I've met with so many people just to talk about learning and leading, and through our net or through the networks that we're establishing. And that's my thing. If you're in the diaspora right now, don't sit back and say you can't help, because
Mhm.
this is just an option. We are so many opportunities for us to get
Yes.
involved. Even just to be able to speak to a child and be a mentor for them, they can ask you questions about life, makes a big difference for so many children who doesn't have a father or a mother in their lives, because they may have carers around them, but sometimes their parents migrate
Yeah.
and they don't have adults that are nearer to them generationally.
Right.
And we can fill those gaps and help them to become, better humans. I don't think the crime situation we have is disconnected from our education
Oh,
plight
absolutely
as
not.
well.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's
you
globally,
know,
that's a proven fact that communities that have the lack of education, not even lack of education, but don't have the resources needed for the children to get an adequate education that prepares them to be adults, that crime is intertwined, is
yeah.
definitely intertwined in that as well. So I agree with you on that point. Two of the things I think that I've learned from COVID, and also being involved in work in Jamaica, is the depth of the need and the breadth. Like the amount of need in Jamaica, not just education, but you're talking about health disparity, food disparity, food scarcity, domestic violence, just so the depth and the breadth of the needs in Jamaica have been astounding. And to counter that, the depth and the breadth of the talent and the resources in the diaspora, there is no reason. Every day I say there's no reason why Jamaica shouldn't begin to make some progress. As everyone in the Jamaica diaspora looked within themselves for the talents, the skills. How can I contribute to something that's happening in Jamaica? We could certainly solve our own problems because it's there. The talent, I mean, when you just look at what you just said, what's been happening, the transformational work that your organization is doing in education, using technology, you are worlds away literally from Jamaica.
Yeah, it's as I said, I'm not claiming any like long-term commitment that has been in my life throughout. It
Mhm.
really was like I'm so far away. I'm helping my family. I'm helping a friend if they contact me. I'm doing what I can do. And it's just when, as I said, COVID came into the game and it really made us realize that we could have always been doing this. This is
Yeah,
the thing. COVID didn't bring new technology. It just allowed us to realize that there's a way in which we can cross
yes.
those seas and get straight into those classrooms and help those kids who, there's so many schools, for example. I am a math teacher by training. So there are so many
Mhm.
schools, for example, that don't have math teachers. And then there are so many that have math teachers or there are reluctant math teachers. And then there are so many that are math teachers who are are doing working in this school because that's the job that they got and they didn't want to be
Mhm.
math teachers. And then the kids are facing that. And they're in classrooms with 50, 55 students. And we can help in just providing instruction, helping with the teaching, helping with the mentoring. So I believe that there is a need for, almost a legion of math teachers who decide that this is a problem we can fix, by saying that we're offering math clinics. If
Mhm.
there are 160 something high schools in Jamaica, we can find 100, and we don't need 160 because about 50 is okay.
Mhm.
About 50 is okay. My phone is ringing. Uh, about 50 is okay. And but the other 100 educators say we're going to help one school by providing some help, mathematics teaching and
Mhm.
learning. Make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Because we're all outside the country
Yeah.
building human capital
Mhm.
of other countries. And the sad part of it is that we were educated in Jamaica.
Mhm.
But then the USA, the UK, Canada, and all these countries get us for free.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're helping them build their economies, and our country, which invested in us,
It's struggling.
that's the way to look at it. That's a way for us to look at it. That
Yeah.
we haven't yet paid off that debt. We haven't.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, absolutely. And that's why these conversations I've been having is so important, because I strongly believe that as a Jamaican born, my family, even though they've been abroad for decades, is still very Jamaican. That's one thing about Jamaicans. They very rarely, rarely lose their culture who they are as Jamaican. But I feel like it's my duty. I was only in Jamaica until I was almost 5. So I left when I was very young. But there was still always this connection and this passion in me for my homeland, always, always. And so this idea that you get educated in Jamaica, you leave and you use those talents that you have elsewhere, and some folks never look back. They never look back for a variety of reasons.
I think part of it is that I think our civic responsibility has never been fully explained or expected. The majority of people get on a plane, go away to help their family. And in their own way, they are helping how they can. In their own way, they're helping in the way that they can. But I think there's a bigger purpose that we can serve as well. That doesn't cost us money. That's a piece it's not about money. You, Rachel, can mentor some young ladies in Jamaica in a school, and it doesn't have to include money at all. It's just someone that they talk to on Zoom from time to time about what it's like to be, a professional working in the field that you're in and what that's like. And also someone who can say, that working hard and persevering. It's a debt that we owe our country. It's a debt. We all got educated, maybe not you, but I certainly was. And it came to me one day. And I was educated in Jamaica all the way to university level on a subsidized education by the government. Wow. But I came to the UK and I went straight into their system as a full-time teacher. They didn't have to pay, they didn't invest in me. They just paid me a salary. So these are realities that we have to come to as diasporans, and say we can give back with a clear conscience that this is not doing more. This is just the minimum. Right. And it doesn't have to cost anything, as you've said. It really doesn't. It's like human capital. And that's the most valuable resource of any country. Study-thon did not cost us a penny. Study-thon didn't cost a penny. Math didn't cost a penny. Not even a penny, just time. But the impact, really far-reaching. The impact was far-reaching. Just giving those kids, even if they did not pass their exam, is to send the message that there were people out there who cared. Yes. It's a powerful. Yes. It is, so they might not pass, but they may next year go, I'll continue. We just need to get in there and realize that money isn't the only solution. Absolutely. So I want to shift a little bit from talking about the organization itself and talking about leadership, because what you've mentioned, when it comes to diasporians getting involved, when it comes to the role this organization took in the education sector and really being able to support teachers and students and essentially families and communities, just through extension, just to being there for teachers and for students. So I want to talk a little bit about leadership for you. So as a leader, and you can think about this, both in the work that you do with the organization and just the work that you do in your professional career, what would you say is one lesson you've learned about leadership? I know you probably have a long list, Dr. Barker. No, I always, if you look at my WhatsApp, it says I'm always learning, and it's a mantra that I live by. I think a leader has to believe that this is a learning experience every single day. I think I've realized that leadership is about connections, it's about building relationships. And if you establish the right kind of relationships, you can move mountains. And you can get people to move things they never believed they were themselves capable of moving. even in their own personal growth. I just believe that. And over time, my I've shifted, from seeing leaders who I emulated and wanted to be like, because that's what they projected as leadership, being the king on the hill and being, and I've been in leadership from a long time. When I was at university, I was hall chairman at Taylor Hall. So I've
Mhm.
always been in the cut and thrust of leadership. And I do remember one of the most powerful things that ever happened. And it has taught me a lot about leadership. And it's when I finished my tenure, I couldn't look back at anything that I felt that I really changed.
Wow.
Couldn't.
Mhm.
I look back I'm talking looking back like 10 years later, I kind of went, that was great. I did a great job. I was an efficient leader. I held things in place. I didn't have any scandals. We didn't waste anyone, didn't defraud the people. We kept things going well. It was an efficient organization, certainly from the feeling that everyone had. But what I wasn't sure of was our effectiveness. Did I
Mhm.
change anything? Did I transform the space that I was in? And so when I began to consider leadership again and reflected on leadership, I really wanted to make sure that any space that I was in was transformed in a positive way, and had a kind of a heart to it, not just the hand and the head, but also a heart to it,
Mhm.
you know, because we can get caught up with the hand, doing things, and the head, thinking of strategies and all that, but it needs a heart. And that heart comes out of, you know, um, Sir Giovanni writes a lot about this, about the hand, the head, and the heart. And that has impacted me positively in the sense of realizing that we need to think of all these things when we do. And so that's why I say connection is the most powerful um, aim that a leader must have. Because when you're connected to the people you lead, you realize that your only goal is to serve them on the journeys that they're going. Because
Mhm.
the people they lead, they're serving them on that journey as well. And so you find that, for example, I work in a school, I'm a school principal. So as a leader, I am serving the needs of my middle leaders. I'm making sure that they are effective in what they do and giving them the support so they can be, impactful and transformative. And if they're doing that and they can see that from me, then they find that their role is to serve the teachers that
Mhm.
they're leading. Now, when the teachers realize that they're served from above, that they have servants that are above them, so to speak, then they become servants to the students that they have. And so what you find is that the real benefit that we want in school must always be flowing in the direction to the students.
Mhm.
So the students are being served. Yeah, this is how it
Mhm.
works. The students are being served, then we're meeting the needs. This is what we're here for. So if you don't have a system that is set up to provide, I call it the service line, then you're always going to have problems. And you'll find that most times you find schools that are not effective. It's because that line is broken. The teachers believe that someone up, the student should be serving them, and the boss thinks the teacher should be
Mhm.
serving them. And there's a disconnection there because it means that the only person who benefits is the boss, so to speak.
Right.
So
For the system.
it's my friend, it's connections. It's not a lot of things. I can only give a lot of experiences. And what I try to do is I always think of the things I experience and then I pause and reflect about what I've learned from it.
Mhm.
Because experience is one thing, but John Dewey says, you don't learn from experience, you learn from reflecting on experience. So until you begin to stop and ask yourself, what did I learn from that?
Mhm.
Yeah, I experienced it, but what did I learn from it? Then you haven't made any progress. You could make the same mistake 100 times. You have to stop and ask yourself, what did I learn from that experience? So for me, it's about connections. And I always want to look at, am I connecting? It really is a goal of mine as a leader to connect to the people I lead.
So I know it's Tuesday, end of day Tuesday for you, and beginning of the day Tuesday for me. But it feels like Sunday service right now because you just preached a whole word. You just preached a whole word, and all I'm waiting for is it offering time? Because that was a whole word that you just preached about servant leadership and just that whole analogy of flowing downward. And that is need. It almost reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which really
Yep.
It's not, but just that whole idea that his is a flow up, but the flow down of if needs of if you look at the top of what needs are being met, it's easier for the folks to, as you go down, to be able to meet the need of the next level going down, the next level going down, because it really flows from the top, right? So that whole idea of servant leadership, close to my heart, passionate.
Leaders set the tone for the organization.
Yes.
You can have a toxic organization if you have a toxic leader, and there's a lot of deliberateness, a lot of intentionality that has to be things. As I said, I'm always learning, and I spend a lot of time thinking about things. Sometimes I'm in my office, I'm just thinking about the day. How did I handle that situation? Did I make the right decision here? Am I being too, these are important things for me, because you get one moment with kids to shape them for life. And in those one conversations, you could make or break a child, and you can make or break an adult as well, because there are children inside as well. And so I always want to make sure that even if I have to deliver some stern accountability message, that people feel that I care as well. And so, these are things that I think leaders set the tone, and the culture in your organization is not an accident. The truth is, you will always have a culture whether you make one or not. So as a leader, you need to make a decision that the culture that you have, you are the one who's making sure that that's the culture. So there's a lot of stuff like that. For me, it's about thinking about it in that way, that we make or break our organizations.
I mean, you've definitely given a lot as we kind of wrap up my interview with you. I mean, we could probably go on for the rest of the evening for you. You've definitely given so much to think about. I mean, for me, the last part of this conversation, the whole conversation is meaningful, but the last part of this conversation, as someone who is very invested in myself as a leader and making sure that I'm transformational, that I know I'm a servant leader. I've been called to serve. I knew that from when I was very young. But this whole idea around efficiency versus effectiveness and how you explain that, and that, it's great to be efficient, but are you effective? Because they are different. They're not the same.
They're not the same.
It really, that stuck. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna steal that. I'll give you credit. But that's a really powerful.
I'm sure you know that this is just stuff I read, stuff I pick out of them.
Right.
There are people doing this a dime a dozen. I'm just sharing my experience. That, you have to be mindful that as you hold leadership roles, it's important that you're more than efficient.
Yes,
efficiency
absolutely.
Is tools can be efficient, but humans have the opportunity to transform and move your organizations. And my goal is to be transformational in the things. And I believe that every word that comes out of my mouth has to reflect the world that I want to see. And that's why I speak about the stuff I speak about, like how we can contribute back in Jamaica without having to think about money. And that's why I believe that, we need to find the right role models for leadership as well. Because sometimes you choose people who say they're leaders, but they're not really leaders.
Right.
They're dealers. They're dealers, transactional. They're not transformational. You give me something, I give you something back. So there's that piece as well. Many people think they're leading, but they're dealing. And it's transformational as against transactional. So there's a lot of that happens, but it comes from reflection and having a center for your reflection. It comes down to, are you connecting? Are you taking your organization into a good place? Is it ethical? Are you making ethical decisions? Can you sleep with this?
Right.
And I want to be able to, I'm not perfect. I make a lot of bad decisions, maybe 10 bad per day out of 100 or whatever. But my aim is to reduce that by being reflective.
Well, I mean, JMed is definitely beyond blessed to have someone like you as a part of the organization. I think Jamaica itself, and just being a Jamaican, I am always so very inspired by my countrymen and women who, really not just as Dr. Street, who I interviewed a while back, says, not just make a living, but make a life, and know the difference between the two, and understand that it's great to make a living, but it's even better to make a life, and to make sure the life that you are making has an impact. Like, you leave a mark. You don't just take up space, but you really leave a mark where you are. And as a Jamaican, it's our duty, as you mentioned before, for our country to do that, to not just pick up ourselves and leave, but find a way. They will have, as you said, money doesn't have to be at all a factor, but find a way to really make a difference in our country.
I want to say that, as I said, JMed is lucky to, you say that, but I actually think I am lucky that I had JMed, because it provided the vehicle for me to realize there are other ways in which I could impact the country,
Right.
There were some amazing people, and I just want to just say, John Warren, John Wayne Warren, Marcia Clark, Lennox Christie, Sam, who reached out to me, I am lucky that there was a space that I feel like I could take risks, I could do stuff, and people aren't going, there wasn't a competition for the space, like,
Right.
let's just get on. So I feel more like I was lucky to meet with JMed and be able to do the things I really wanted to do, because without JMed, I would have to be figuring it out all on my own. So I want to say thanks to them for doing that. And there's nothing in this world that doesn't have a group of people sitting in a room one day and saying, let's do something. And I think JMed was that. Who did that? I mean, powers to them. Somebody has to start it. There's always there's a lovely quote I remember sharing. I don't remember who to attribute it to, and I should. And it says, I always used to say, when I see problems, that somebody needed to do something about it. And then one day I realized that I was that somebody. And it's a powerful thing. And they saw that, we needed to have something going on, and they did that. As I said, transformational in that regard.
So
it's a great organization.
Yes, and on that note, how can folks get connected with JMed? Whether it's website, social media, how can we get connected?
There's a website that we have. As I said, I mean, JMed's purpose is very much getting back into the country, helping out. Our goal is to really provide an impact in Jamaica's educational system, certainly from the educational task force. And so once people arrive in the diaspora, this part, they normally will be connected. There's, Jamaicans. I remember when I was coming to the Middle East, I typed into Google a long time ago, is there any Jamaicans in Moscow? Because you want to know, right? It so happened that there was one, there was one that was here. And by the time I got here, I realized there were others, So you tend to do that, and you'll find JMed popping up, and we reach out and we support, and we have social events. I'm in Oman, so there's not a lot happening on my side, but certainly on the Dubai, Abu Dhabi side, there's a lot of social events. They're involved in a lot of stuff. So the other side of it is that if people are in Jamaica and they're looking for help within their school community, they can always email me, email my team, and say, hey, we're looking for a math teacher to help. We want to be part of the math clinic. Want to be part of Studython. We want to be, we are always ready to find a solution for those things, because we just need to know the need. We have the talent. We have the commitment. We just need the need, because the hardest thing is for us, and the thing that we found the most challenging, is when you want to help, but on the ground, there's no one there. You need someone on the ground. I'll make it happen. Someone who's going to send a WhatsApp to the kids and say, come, the lesson is going to start. Where are you? And with that note, I actually want to thank Mr. O'Neill Lawrence down at this school, Bushet High, because he was on the WhatsApp with the kids, man. He was the first one the believer first, with our math clinic. And I just want to say, and Durban Malcolm as well, done a lot of promotion for that event. Durban Malcolm at Power 106. I have to thank all the people, because nothing that gets done by one person, you know.
Right.
Those pyramids in Giza, a lot of people built them, you know.
I see
They're
you
not
giving
there just
all your shout outs
I have
to folks, which
because
is great.
you have to because I'm here only, but none of what I've ever been able to do has not come by the support and the belief and the commitment and the knowing that they'll not say no.
Right.
Yeah, none of it. And Leo back in JDTAN and Dr. Dice back in JDTAN, powerful people who
Yeah.
energy, high levels of
Yeah.
energy, a lot of power.
That is very true. That is very, very true.
Really great people, and they just set the bar so high.
So is there a website or are you guys on social media?
There's a website. If you Google like Jamaica Middle East Diaspora, there's a website. You'll see some of the stuff that we're doing. We're not very good at saying all the stuff we're doing. So some stuff are there, but I don't think we promote everything. Like, I suppose it's what it is, Just do it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think both, we know both is important. It's important just to do the work, but then share the work so others can see and be inspired, but also, attract those who may want to lend their skills as well. So, they're both, I think, is equally as important.
I say reach out. If anyone needs any help, reach out. It doesn't have to even be me. It will filter back to me if it's education, but reach out. Let's get some stuff going. We have a number of partnerships coming up this year. This year has been a little bit slow. I think we are just into COVID, but I'm realizing that schools in Jamaica are still online, so we may be able to get back in. I thought they were going to be. We want to see what the boat was doing before we started to rock it,
Okay. And for those who are watching, as I say every week, if you're watching this video on YouTube, the information for JMed will be below the video. So we'll put the website, we'll put any emails that are appropriate there, and ways that you can stay connected or learn more about what JMed is doing or even support. If you are watching this on Facebook, the information for JMed is going to be above the video. So YouTube will be below the video. If you're watching this on Facebook, it will be above the video, and we'll have the information where you can stay connected to Dr. Barker and the work that JMed is doing in the Middle East and Jamaica. There's a lot of work being done in Jamaica. So once again, Dr. Barker, thank you so very much for taking the time after I know what probably was a long day of work to talk with me about the work that JMed is doing, the work that you are doing to better the lives of Jamaicans at home and abroad. I'm grateful for your time.
Well, thank you very much as well. And thank you for taking the time out to begin to show some of this, because if it gets people tapping into what we're doing and asking, can you help? It helps us what we do, because the cry for help is what we need.
Absolutely. And thank you all so much for tuning in for another episode of Jam Talk. This is actually the final interview for this particular series. Yes. So our first inaugural Jam Talk series, which included 8 interviews. Dr. Barker is closing out what has been a very informative and inspiring 8 sessions for me. It's been wonderful to meet all these leaders. And so Dr. Barker is also in a special seat today because he's a final interview in this 8-part series. We will be restarting next month. We will let you know the date that we're going to premiere our next series of 8 interviews with amazing Jamaicans who are doing amazing work to better the lives of Jamaicans at home and abroad. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you again next time. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye-bye.